Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Education in Focus, where today we will be thinking about end of school transitions with Jason and Lisa. Transitions in general can be hard for any child, especially adopted children, and the end of year can signal a lot of loss for our adopted children, which in turn can trigger some really difficult feelings for them. So, we wanted to take some time today to think about what our children might experience and how, alongside school, we can support them the best that we can. So, Jason and Lisa, are there any common challenges that children and adopted children face with end of year transitions?
Oh yeah, it's always a difficult time of year for nearly all children, I'd say, regardless of whether they're adopted or not. Actually, it's just thinking back to my own experiences where they started getting quite wobbly quite soon after the May half term, usually, because they know things are changing. Often they've had things like SATs if they're in year six or phonics screeners. There's other things that have done big sort of events that they've done that they've sort of got past. They've had sports day perhaps or getting towards sports day, so things start to feel different anyway in school. So they've got events that they don't normally do, that's slightly out of kilter. And then they start getting speculation about who your teacher might be, and children start whittering amongst themselves. Whether or not there's been anything said, often isn't announced that early. So they start speculating and wondering and asking questions, and this sort of thing, it sort of begins to build a sense of bubble and anxiety amongst everybody. So I think parents in general will feel that and begin to notice it. So it's difficult because I think for our children, it might be, is this part of their norm? Is this part of a normal reaction, or is this something else? Because for our children, it is going to be more difficult. I think mostly, generally speaking, it's going to be more triggering because, like you've said, it's around loss and change again, and a sense of abandonment in some cases, and fear of the unknown, especially when they don't know what's happening yet.
Yeah, and I think that they sometimes feel it before they know it because it might sound strange to say, but schools start to feel very different after the May half term. The weather, hopefully, it has this year, but the weather turns, so it's feeling hotter, it's perhaps feeling stuffier, but also things like the food in the canteen will change to reflect the weather. They might be able to use new areas of the school, like the field, so playtimes might look and feel a bit different. There may be more trips that are being arranged, and certainly in secondary schools, some teachers have lost their exam groups. And what that meant for me as a teacher, I had a lot of exam groups when I was teaching, and that meant that once the exams were underway, I had so much more time to plan for my year sevens, my year eights, and my year nines. And I'd be like hitting them with lessons that were fun, but perhaps more challenging and less routine based than they'd had all year. So, with all those things around playtime, lunchtime, and also the lessons looking slightly different and trips being thrown in here and there, it can just feel really different to them without the worries of what's yet to
Mm.
come. It's just not the same as it was. And so that can be quite challenging for children as well.
No, that's brilliant, guys. Yeah, completely agree. And I think even you are right. You do sense the change. And I remember, and this is going back a few years, not many, but a few, when I was at school. You'd have that big TV brought out on wheels and
Yeah.
brought into the
Oh yeah,
classroom, and you'd know it was coming to the end of kind of the school year because it was movie time.
yeah. And even visual cues like displays start coming down in primary schools, and
Yeah.
the classroom doesn't look like the same anymore. And that all generates that sense of things are changing, and our children also need that routine and that structure. And it's suddenly a lot of it starts to disappear, like you say, if there's events happening and all those other changes. So it definitely can be a real trigger for our children. So I mean, particularly those that have had lots of moves in their lives, lots of separations, and that fear of another one. And like you said, Lisa, sometimes they can feel it without knowing really why.
Yeah.
Perhaps the older ones can, but often the younger ones won't. They'll just feel something, but they don't know what's happening, and so that might display itself in behaviour that's more challenging. And I've seen that again as a head. I saw lots of behaviours that suddenly became more obvious in the summer, and that was all children, but maybe often even more so for children who've been through trauma. So it becomes more challenging. So that's even more reason why, where possible, schools should, or hopefully they do, try to keep as much normal as they can amongst all the change that's going on around them. So yeah, the changes are often quite important. I mean, a lot of the changes might feel exciting and positive in many ways on the face of it. Like I said, there might be a big trip out, there might be a residential visit for some children for the first time if
Mm.
they're primary. sports day and all this sort of stuff that's and maybe like a performance of some kind is new, and it can be on the face of it exciting, but we even know that positive experiences like Christmases and birthdays and excitement can also feel a bit like stress. They're not indistinguishable for our children. So it might seem like, well, there might be lots of lovely things to do. Why would you feel like this? Can be an obvious question you might ask a child who's maybe kicking off or behaving in a challenging way around a thing that everyone else thinks this is lovely or spoiling it for us, which is kind of how it might be seen. And that's got to be very careful that adults don't respond in that way if this is happening, and trying to understand what's underneath it, really.
This might also sound really daft, but I think everyone gets affected by warm weather and things can become more fractious as well. And so again, we can like fall
Absolutely.
into that trap of thinking, oh, well, the weather's lovely and you're outside and you're playing and it should be absolutely wonderful. But actually tempers get frayed really,
They do.
really quickly. And that goes for
Yeah.
children. So we
Hmm.
would typically see a lot more friendships, like, there'd be a lot more falling out, a lot more bickering in summer months. But also, it goes for the adults as well. Perhaps they are not as patient as they are at other times. I hate to say it, but I speak from experience that if I'm hot and stuffy and I've spent a lot of time planning this wonderful, fun lesson to treat my year sevens, and it falls a little bit flat because of the lack of routine, the lack of structure, and everyone's hot and fractious, I perhaps might not have responded in the best pacey way myself. And it's just that awareness, isn't it, that alongside all of these changes, the people involved might also just not be at their best.
Yeah.
So we spend all the year looking forward to these hot summer months, and then when they get here we realize that actually they're really hard work.
They're very busy times of year because there's reports to write, there's for teachers, I'm thinking
Mm.
here, there's assessments to update, there's all the considerations of the next classes. Often the teachers are involved in sort of helping to choose which children should go to which classes, if there's going to be any mixing, because in some schools there's no choice. If they're single form entry, you just move up. It's fairly predictable, but there's a lot going on. It gets busier. In fact, the face of it, you might think, oh, we can relax and ease off. No, we can't. You actually accelerate towards end of term in many cases. And yeah, you're right. And everyone's feeling tired. The children are feeling tired. So it just generally can create that sort of pressure keg, I suppose you might call it. So yeah, so there we are. We
And
created lots of the issues.
yeah, and I think there's that pressure at home too, isn't there? And I know kind of you both were talking about this before we came into here about, as a parent, 6 weeks, that's a lot of entertaining children and managing childcare, and if you work, and so I think there is pressure from all sides, and it's hot and it's different, so that there's a lot of challenges that our children face coming to the end of year.
Oh, can I also just say, just thinking about it most recently for us, we're really struggling with sleep as well because
Mhm.
my husband and I are struggling to sleep because we wake up when the sun comes out, which is far too early in my mind. But our little one is going to sleep later because we might be outside, we might be having a barbecue, it's lighter, so she doesn't think that it's time to go to bed. And we do have blackout blinds and all that kind of thing. But I think sometimes sleep might get a little bit condensed as well for
Yeah.
everybody. So that adds in.
So I think perhaps we should look at what happens next. I mean, what do the schools need to do? I suppose is the next
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, it's a lot of challenges we've thrown out there for everyone at home.
Let's try and look at some positives. Quick, shall we? Press
Yeah.
everybody.
Well, I hand over to you guys. What can school do in advance of end of year, and at home what can we do? How can we work together?
Or go on, Jason. Sorry, we both went at the
Oh,
same time then.
I know, but I don't know. Well, I was going to say, I think from my point of view, the best thing to do is be prepared and have a plan. Um, and we're talking after the May half term as we record this, and if you're a parent listening to this and you've got a child is adopted, and you're worried about the transition, you've not got a transition plan in place, that's the first thing I'll be saying. Right, let's find out what is the plan and finding out from school, because you need to have one. I really think you need to have one. There's always a transition plan of some sort going on in school, but it may be a routine thing that for the majority of children helps them through. But for our children, they will need something extra, and I would hope that the school knows that. I would hope that the school's been made aware by the parents that the sort of triggers that your child has, but it may be that it gets forgotten or lost in the melee of everything else that's going on. So I really think I'll be absolutely getting onto the school as soon as I could if they haven't got a plan necessarily in place for your child that's a little bit different perhaps to the others. What does the plan look like? What's it got in place? So it should include things like additional visits to their new class, their teacher, depending on what it is. I mean, if it's within the school and it's new teachers within the school they might have some familiarity with, then that's a bit easier to organise. But there should still be something. Obviously, much more difficult if it's a transition from one school to another. Then there really should be additional visits in place, and there should have been a meeting around that. And that's something quite routine that does happen. So if it's not happened, you're not asking for something at all that's out of the ordinary. Often children with additional needs, in any case, have additional visits to schools. And these sometimes go to, I think, sometimes from year 6 to year 7. I remember children going on quiet times of the day to the school to visit key members of staff that they'll get to know when they go into year 7. But there's no other children around the building, or it's very quiet. It's after home time. So their first experience is calm. They can have a good look round rooms. They can ask questions. They don't feel that sense of pressure and chaos and madness of everything going on, and a bit overwhelming. So then they can have another visit where perhaps there are some children around. It might be that you can even arrange some children to meet and greet that child and say, hello, I used to be in year 6. I remember feeling like this. Do you want to ask me questions about what it was like and things like that? So again, visit, ask questions, have a look round, begin to get familiar. There should be, anyway, most schools will have arrangements with the secondary schools that they feed into anyway, where there are children are taken as a class to visit the school. But if your child's had the opportunity to be there already, and at least seen some familiarity of the site, because navigating a big secondary school is such a different challenge, isn't it, for children who've been in a primary school all these years. So hopefully they've had that experience, and they'll actually be in a step ahead in some ways of their peers, which will be quite nice because they can almost say, well, I know what's down this corridor. No, it gives them a little bit more confidence. I think it definitely can help them.
That's it. Thinking what it looks like in a secondary school. So if we're mainly talking about transitions within the same school, obviously, because because we're not talking about the primary to secondary move. And there are so many things that teachers can do and the school can do to help.
Yeah.
And it can range from quite formal things like sending the whole class to meet the new teacher and having like a taster lesson with their teacher for next year. But it could also just be quite small things. So making the school aware that your child is a little bit anxious, they could perhaps be given some errands where they have to go and take a new set of textbooks to their teacher for next year, have a look at the new classroom, that kind of thing. So it can be a lot more informal. But by talking to the school and making them aware that perhaps your child is struggling or will struggle, maybe, it's also heightening their awareness of perhaps they might need more sensory breaks. Perhaps they might need to use the nurture room more. Perhaps they haven't used it yet. Perhaps they don't normally need support during the lunchtime, but because everything feels a bit different now, they might choose to use it. So I think just letting them know that they might have an all-round need, and it might not be so obviously transition linked, but probably is. I think because teachers know that it's a difficult time, but they might not be aware of like the softer side of it or the kind of the more hidden side of it. It's just highlighting that to them, I think, is really, really useful. I was going to say something else then, but I've completely forgotten what it was. I'm sure it'll pop in at some point. But if I think about kind of the end of secondary school, where a child might be transitioning to sixth form or a sixth form college, then actually I think the onus is a lot more on you as a family to make that transition smooth. Many schools and colleges do have good links with one another, but you can't um, as a sixth form college, you can't guarantee who's going to come. So it's very hard to get that kind of formal induction in before the summer holiday. And so if you feel that your child is anxious, then it's probably up to you to contact the, the new the new place and kind of say, I think my child is a bit anxious about this. They would really benefit from having a chance to visit, having a chance to have a look around when it's a bit quieter, finding out where the lunch hall is, finding out where the quiet spaces are, all that kind of thing. And they will be more than happy to accommodate you, but they won't necessarily be targeting you before the summer holiday. Some do, some don't, but the links are not quite so strong. So it's just worth bearing that in mind. If your child is finishing their GCSEs now and thinking of moving somewhere else, it probably falls more on you to help them with that transition initially. But I did remember what I was going to say before, actually, and this is thinking back to if children are transitioning within the same school. Um, in an ideal world, we would be able to tell all children who their teachers are going to be in the next year. But in some instances, that's not known because decisions haven't been made about setting or who's going to have which group, but also because, it's the time of year where a lot of staff leave and then you have new staff starting in September. And I think as an adult, and I've certainly said this to children in the past, oh, well, we don't know who your teacher's going to be next year because it's someone it's Mrs. Smith and she's really lovely. I met her when she came for her interview and it's going to be absolutely fine. But I kind of felt that was enough to hold them. And in some instances, that probably isn't enough. And again, just highlighting to staff that their children are going to need more support around that uncertainty than just saying it'll be fine, is as an adult we think that might be enough, but it might not be. So yeah, just be aware that not all teachers will be known, and they should be aware of the impact of that on their little ones.
Yeah, that's a good point. I noticed you said something interesting as well when you talked about some of that internal informal stuff that takes place in secondary. It's just the same in primary. In fact, a lot of the transition work needs to be informal, and if there's no plan in place, there should be, as I said before. But a plan would include things like just making little excuses for your child to visit the new class teacher, even if they don't know with their class teacher yet, perhaps, because like just to carry things to the class. Oh, can you take these boxes over to so and so, please? And you've got to be quite creative not to single them out. If they hate being singled out, feeling different, because they want to be like everyone else, which is quite normal, quite understandable. You'd have to send a small group of them, so it wouldn't appear like they're being taken. But everyone, the adults know. So the teacher receiving this stuff that needs, oh, could you stay? Oh, fantastic. And it sort of pot around doing a sort of fairly easy job, like sorting some papers or whatever, that didn't really need doing, but it's just an opportunity for a discussion so they can have a quiet chat around the table and just sort of, it's just those informal opportunities that you create for a little developing relationship to happen. And then they can sort of say hi when they're on the playground and things like that. And then once the announcements are made about whose class they're going to be in, they can say, "Oh, I'm so excited that you can be with me," and then they can actually put more overt visits in that up front and say, "Of course you can come and see me anytime you want." And again, they can be outside the normal school hours if it makes it easier for the child to do it within the classroom's empty, because listens I'd like to know where they'll be sitting, where the peg is, and where the tray is. All those little things that make them feel secure, and help them. And the teacher can help them choose certain things, like, well, what would you like here, and what would you like there, and what do you like doing? And hopefully that can all just help them feel a little bit more like it's a positive thing to look forward to as much as possible, but try and sell it. And I see the beauty of having a plan is, of course, it means these things happen, and also you at home will be aware this is what's happening, so you can then say, right, I know they visited the new class today, so I'm going to make sure I'm expecting my child to come home in some kind of heightened state, either excited, hopefully, or maybe anxious, or both. But I'm ready for it. I know what's happening. Whereas if you don't know what's happening, there's no plan. Information sent about new classes, and your child comes home in a heightened state. You've got no idea why, and you're sort of dealing with the problem after the event rather than having to manage it before, which makes it much harder. I always think things like asking for a book. Transition books are a really good idea for younger children. So, and again, schools often do, but sometimes they don't. So it's best to ask and just check. I mean, I had to do this. We were in a school that was really supportive and lovely. We had the children there, but they sort of forgot to do a transition book for one of the children who really needed it because he was getting so anxious. So we had to ask and say, look, oh yeah, and it took a few reminders to get one. And all it consists of is photos of the classroom, photos of the key members of staff that will be in the class, bits about them and what they like doing and things like, just so the child can have that and look at it whenever they want to, and look at it and keep it over the summer as well, as they can if they need it. Really helpful. Sometimes transitional objects, we know about that, don't we, as well, that our children sometimes need a transitional object that helps them to know that we're still thinking of them or attached to them. It could be like something they hold in their pocket. It could be something attached to their bag. Something that we kind of shows that we're holding them in our thoughts and our minds. So that can also work for transition as well. So that their current teacher can give them something to look after, so they're not forgotten in a sense if they're moving on. And they'll come and check on them and that sort of thing. So it's similar kind of therapeutic process, I suppose, that we do as parents.
I do remember on a few occasions returning in September, and we have like lots of schools have like apps or ways of
Mm.
communicating with children. I do remember a few times it returning in September and just sending a message saying, I hope you had a lovely summer. Um, I know that Mrs. Smith is your teacher this year. She's absolutely fantastic, but I'm going to be checking with her to see how you're getting on.
Mm-hmm.
Something along those lines, just to let them know that even though I'm not teaching them anymore, they're in
Yeah.
my thoughts and I haven't kind of abandoned them.
No.
And obviously making a point that when I see them in the corridor, not embarrassing them in front of their friends, obviously, but when you see them in the corridor, just kind of checking in and saying, "Oh, and how's it going? Have you got any better at solving quadratic equations? Or is there anything you remember? If you're stuck with anything, you can always come and see me." And 9 times out of 10, they actually didn't come back and see me. I'm not really sure what that says about me, but I like to think just that kind of like ongoing checking in kind of allowed them to know that they weren't forgotten
Yeah.
about. And so I think again that's something that teachers might not always recognize, or schools might not always recognize,
Mm.
that transition, yes, is predominantly, we put a lot of the legwork in June and July, but it can continue into September as well, just that
Yeah.
easing in and making sure that they know they've not been forgotten. So that's something we can bring to the school's attention if it's not foremost in their mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good point. And I think sometimes it's easy for schools to, like we've talked about masking before, haven't we? If your child appears like they're just coping
Mm.
and everything looks okay, they might not think that they need to put additional transitions things in place, because they think, well, it's a bit pointless, they seem fine. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean they are fine, of course, and that's where it's, as parents, I think it's important to be able to make that point and say, I know they don't appear it, but trust me, they are, because when they're coming home, it's coming out, I can see it all, and
Yeah.
that can be quite tricky sometimes to help schools understand that that's what's going on. It doesn't do anyone any harm, does it? After all, if they didn't need it and you gave them extra transition, well, it's not going to do any harm. So it's not really an issue for anybody, I would think, to do it. It just takes a bit of time for the odd few people, but it doesn't. It's not really a huge time-consuming process.
No.
Once it's happening, it's just getting it all planned in the first place.
Mm. I worked with with a little one who was finding kind of the end of the year transition really difficult, and school did something really great.
Mm.
So her new class teacher wrote 6 cards and gave them to mum for mum to give to her over the 6 weeks holiday. So a card a
Oh,
week from her new teacher saying, "Oh, well, hope you've been doing something great this week. I've been," and kind of went off what she was planning on doing
yeah,
over
yeah.
the 6 weeks. And it was just that little, "Oh, Miss so and so sent you another card," and have a look, and building that relationship. And that,
Oh,
I thought that was beautiful.
really lovely idea, yeah.
It was,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah. And it didn't rely on the teacher kind of having to remember in the 6 weeks to send that or to send an email, because it was already all pre-prepared and they're ready for mum. And I think for some little ones or older ones, but potentially littler ones, is taking them back to school, not to drop them off, not as kind of a "you've been naughty, I'm going to drop you off here," because we don't recommend doing that, but reminding them that school is still there. Because for some of our children,
Mm.
if they can't see something or it's not a daily thing, it's like it ceases to
Yeah,
exist.
yeah.
Yeah.
So taking them just to walk around the school gates and say, "Oh, that's where your new classroom's going to be, so you'll go through that door and we'll line up here." I think that can be helpful as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
our parents, you guys will know your children the best and will know what will work for them. But I think you're absolutely right that our children can mask so well
yeah.
at school. We can't. The more of something that you're giving can't do any harm.
No, it won't do any harm at all. And if you're thinking it's your child needs it, then your child needs it. That's the end of it, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I suppose the thing you can do is at home as well is especially it's quite a useful way of directing some of that energy is your child can make a book about them as well and all about me. Sometimes schools have a template that they send home, ask you to do it, which is something because they recognise that's quite a useful activity in itself. But even if they don't, you can have a go at making a little book that the child can say, well, this is a picture of me. I have a photo, or they can draw one, and they can add some things about themselves. You might need to help them if they struggle to say anything. But favorite colors, pets, all that kind of stuff. Just mundane but interesting things they like, things they don't like, and if they want, they might be able to explore things that things that make me upset or things that worry me or stuff like that. But if they want to go that far, they can. But otherwise, keep it very light, keep it very fluffy, and it's something they can hand over to the teachers. Hopefully, that will help them to say, "This will help you know all a bit about me as well." So there's a kind of a two-way process. This if the school hands one over to them about this is the new class, this is from us. There's one about so there's a bit of a swap information that way. So that I think that definitely helps some children quite a lot.
I like that idea, and I think also I know we've spoken before that, meeting new staff in September, especially in secondary school, and there's so many staff, it is helpful as parents to have like a little document that you might want to pass on your key messages about your child, about what triggers them, or things to look out for. So how you recognise in their behaviour that they're struggling. It might be acting the clown a little bit, might be regressing slightly, and kind of passing all that information on. That's something that we have to do or could do in September. So by asking a child to work on an all about me, that gives us as parents to also be a chance to be working on all about my child at the same time and thinking about what we want to pass on.
Yeah, really important. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, of course. Again, I can speak from experience, but I know that staff spend a long time in primary schools. Again, I don't know the secondary schools, probably a similar thing, but they have long meetings where they talk about the children they've got this year to the new teacher who's having those children, one at a time, going through the things academically about their assessments, etc., and where they are, the things that help them to learn, the friends that they work well with, the friends to avoid, but also those sort of the pastoral issues around things, around some of the background and so on. So that those conversations are really quite valuable, incredibly valuable actually, and so they do take place. You just don't see it, obviously, and they're taking reams of notes, and they've got lots of other ways of passing out information on. But that sort of stuff does happen quite regularly.
And it does happen in secondary schools as well. It looks slightly different because rather than kind of one class, one teacher having the class the majority of the time, lots of teachers are involved. So when I say those conversations are more ad hoc, I don't mean to be derogatory about them, but there's just a lot of them with a lot of different people in a secondary school. And what I found particularly helpful was I do remember a couple of parents coming to me and saying, I just wanted you to know that of all the teachers my child had last year, they got on with Mr. White the best, and Mr. White understood them and really really did manage to kind of like inspire them and make them feel good about themselves. And my child really enjoyed his lessons. So if you could have a word with him and just find out a little bit more, then that would be really helpful. And that was nice because a child might have had 13 teachers the year before and to be pointed in the right direction of the one who kind of understood them the best was helpful for me. So that might be something you want to pass on to the school as well.
Is there anything else you think that we can do at home? Or we've covered a lot in a very short space of time.
I think it's like, I'm sure we don't tell parents this because they're really good at this, but we know that often our children struggle with lots of things, don't they? So it's about helping them to understand, again, it's normal to feel these things, and that other children will be feeling it too, maybe not as intensely, but they still will be having it, and it's normal to feel a bit scared when things are new or changing, and help them to express them, hopefully in a more healthy way than maybe just throwing things around or getting angry, but that sometimes might just happen anyway. I suppose it's helpful to, if they've got friends, I know sometimes our children struggle to make friends, but they've got a few friends that they have good relationships with, it's good to try and keep those contacts going through the summer holiday as well. So they make sort of play dates and stuff like that, chances to play, because that's a connection with what they've just had, because it all sort of ends quite quickly. They've got this sort of 6 weeks or so of unfilled time, non-structured time. So I think that connection with the friends from the school is important, particularly, I suppose, if they're going from year 6 to 7, because they'll be mixing with children from other schools then when they get into year 7. So if they try and somehow keep those connections with the friends they've got, that's obviously great.
Also, though, you say about mixing with children who they don't know, and I know that there is a financial impact of this, but that time between year 6 and year 7 is a really good time to perhaps be utilising like holiday clubs if you can afford to put them in for a session a week, just to give them the opportunity to mix with children who they don't already know and who might be going to their school next year, because it kind of gives them a bit of a kickstart in knowing a few more people. So, like I say, I know there's a financial impact on that, but holiday clubs are good at helping them maintain the current friendships and also form new ones.
Yeah. I think it's also being patient, isn't it? I mean, I know it's easy to say be patient when you're in the middle of it. It's not easy at all, especially when it's hot and tired, like I said. But I'm talking about being patient with yourself as well, I think, because it's so easy to get really wound up about the whole process and really worried about what's going on for your child. And it might actually, when you take a bigger picture view, it might be a few weeks of this, which then calms down. So,
Mm.
sort of don't be hard on yourself, I would say, particularly if you can. Take a moment to breathe and to try and look at the bigger picture around all of this. There's always support from the adoption support workers, of course, if you need it.
Yeah. Something that I've found useful, and initially I did it for me, not for my daughter, but was to kind of have a planner. It's stuck on the cupboard in the
Oh, yeah.
kitchen, and it's just a calendar that I printed off online, but it tells me what my daughter's doing every day, and I needed it myself because in the holidays the childcare changes and she's with my mum and dad some days, she's with my husband on other days, I've got annual leave and she's with me, we go on a holiday, she's going to kids club on certain times, and I could get myself really stressed trying to remember where I was supposed to drop her and when, and have I done a packed lunch and all of this, that and the other. But I found it's really helpful for her as well because she's got an overview of what that week looks like, and she knows who's going to be looking after her or what kind of things that she can expect. But also, so my daughter still counts in sleeps, and she'll ask how many sleeps until I see Thea, and I can say, oh, it's 3 sleeps until you see Thea. How many sleeps until I see Nana and Pa? Well, we're going to see Nana and Pa in 5 sleeps, and it just helps her kind of know what the week looks like. And so yeah, it's not a rocket science, and it really did help me. But another thing that I like to do is to ask her perhaps what she wants to do over the summer, and then show her where I've slotted those in. Um, Something I'm going to try this year. I don't know whether like how it's going to work, but there's a book called 50 Things to Do Before You're 5 3/4. I know that's going to be a lot younger than many of our listeners' children. I am aware of that, but it's from the creator. It's A.A. Milne, isn't it? The creator of Winnie the Pooh, and it's just got lots of nice activities in that are outdoorsy, and I'm going to try and use that as a bit of a structure for the summer holidays in our time together, where we can kind of like tick off these activities. If I get time, I might even try and create a scrapbook out of it. This is setting my expectations really high here for myself. But I'm hoping also having that structure of ticking a few things off, either things she's chosen to do or these 50 things, might also kind of help her feel a little bit less lost and a little bit less like it's masses of unfilled time, because there's a whole host of things for us to get through. So yeah, I have no idea if that would be useful to people, but that, filling time with things they want to do, or perhaps like a list of challenges might be
I like that.
useful.
I think there is
Lovely.
one for older children as well. I'm sure it's the National Trust or something. I have to have a
Oh
look. I think
yeah,
I think it's right for 50 things to do before you're 11 or 12 or something like that. I'm sure there is
yeah.
a similar thing, but equally your child might not. It depends on if your child developmentally not at 11-year-old, then it might suit them. Some of those 5-year-old things, just don't tell them it's for them
Well, to
if
be
they still
honest, the
want to.
first
Yeah.
one that I found was playing poo sticks. Where you chuck a stick in the water
Yeah,
and you watch it. And I'm thinking, I still like doing that, and I'm in my 40s. So, if you don't tell them the
exactly.
title, the activities are still pretty good.
Yeah, of
So,
course they are. Yeah. Actually, that's a good thing you said about that timetable, because I remember we did do that last summer actually with our boys. We had and it was the same thing. It's how many sleeps, and after the day gone, we could cross the day off, and they could see it
mm,
was moving and getting closer towards, like say, the little holiday or the days out or whatever, or visits to so and so, and swimming lessons, all the rest of it. So, yeah, because they need it, because they're so used to the structure and routine, and they need it. It's one of the nearest things you can do.
yeah. I also think that it's useful to um, even if you're having a day where it's not particularly structured. So on this planner, I will write day at home with mom, um,
Mm,
but it's not particularly structured. But at least she knows what the day is going to look like. It's a day at home with me. But I try to make those days still quite structured, in that breakfast is still around the same time that she would have
mm,
it when we were going to school. Lunch is still around the same time that she'd have it when she's at school. we'll still have the afternoon snack at about home time, we'll still have tea at the same time, because those kind of very those sensory markers, the things that her body is expecting, still occur at the same time.
Yeah.
And it can be very tempting for me not to have breakfast until about 11 o'clock if, we've got nowhere to be. But I try to make sure for her that she's still got that regularity that her body needs, even if perhaps the activities that we're doing are less structured than she's used to.
Yeah, good point. I mean, of course, sometimes there are days when children want some downtime and don't, when I say want to be doing, let's say in inverted commas, anything we've organised, just let them slob around if they want to, if they're capable of doing that. I mean, if you're lucky to have children that are happy to do that, that's
Duvet
great.
day. I love a duvet day.
Our children didn't always like to slob around. They had to be on the go all the time, so you couldn't, you really wouldn't do much of that, much as I might have wanted it.
Well, thanks, Jason and Lisa. I think although we kind of started it off talking about a lot of challenges, hopefully we've balanced that out with things that you can do at home and things that you can do alongside school. So that brings us kind of to the end of today's chat. We wish you the absolute best of luck for the 6 weeks holiday. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to look out for other episodes. Don't forget you can also contact us at any time with any questions that you have, any suggestions, or if you fancy joining us on the podcast, you would be more than welcome. So you can contact us at education@adoption-focus.org.uk. Thanks for listening.